Okie doke. So we're in week number 4 of Deuteronomy. Um, and tonight we're going to talk about chapter 6. If you remember from the beginning of the study, we were in chapter 6 a little bit, because in chapter 6 is that little section called the Shema, and we're going to look at that again a little bit tonight. So it that the sort of the central piece of 6 is the Shema, and it's one of the greatest commandments, that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. All right, so here's where we are in our study. So week number 4, if you remember correctly.
Give me a second because we always use Herman's Bible
Okay.
and I didn't have mine booted up here.
All right. Well, we're not there yet, so you keep looking. I'll keep talking. So if you
Okay.
kind of look for where we were at, we started week 1 with just an introduction, kind of breakdown, purpose of the book, what the book was about, sort of the different sections of the book. And then second week we talked a lot about the importance of remembering. And then last week we had an introduction to the laws. So as we're moving along here, any insights, questions, or comments as we've moved through the first 3 weeks of Deuteronomy?
Mm.
No big insights. Hey, how you doing, Herman?
Oh, sorry, I was taking out the trash.
That's okay.
Okay, you got home late because you were working.
So and no big insights, no revelations.
Just, I mean, we say this a lot, but just this, the cyclical nature of everything. It's amazing to me that God just does not get sick of us.
That is true. That is true. Because he gives us, we give him a run for his money. That's for certain.
More than that.
Mhm.
More than a
Yeah. All right.
marathon.
So our key verse for tonight again is chapter 6, verse 4 through 9. Verse 4 is the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as irons between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So that's kind of where we're going to be focused tonight. So, opening question. What is one thing or one person you love deeply, and how do you show that love?
It's my husband and I don't do it very well.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
I'm
All
I'm
right.
not I'm very mean to him, I'm sorry. But
Uh,
he's the person that I love more than anything else.
okay.
Other than my kids.
All
Kids
right.
come first.
Okie doke.
So if you love somebody deeply, you want to please them, right?
Okay.
I try and I don't very often get there, but that's okay.
And how do you please God?
Well, yeah. Well, we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
Mhm. So what does God tell us that he wants?
So, when we talk about how do you show that love, you want to please them, okay? Um, any other ways that we show our love?
Protect them,
Okay, good. Protect them.
do for them.
Make sure he's got dinner on the table.
Okay.
And the
Take
and the
care of
dinner
them.
that he likes.
What's that?
And the dinner that he likes.
Okay, Nick, did you,
Unfortunately, he'd like me to have the house clean, and that's not going to happen.
okay, well, you can get people for that.
Yes, I know.
Nick, did you say
And God
something?
bites them.
I
I've
said
tried
take care of
God
them.
bites
Take care of them. Good.
Yeah.
How about spend time with them?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So, we're gonna talk a little bit about this in relationship to God tonight. And so, if we look at the chapter 6, 1 through 19, we're going to look at that together. Now, this is the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land to which you're going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God, you and your son and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commands, which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you in the land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one.
Excuse me.
You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So, and when the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to you, with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of all good things that you did not fill, and the cisterns that you did not dig, and the vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, then take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve, by his name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples who are around you. For the Lord your God in your midst is a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. You shall not, as you tested him at Massa. You shall not, you shall diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God and his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may go well with you, and that you may go in and take possession of the good land that the Lord swore to give to your fathers, by thrusting out all your enemies from before you, as the Lord has promised. So as you listened, as you read along with that piece of scripture, what seemed to pop off the page at you? Some of it we've heard before. Anything in particular?
Um, there's a lot of instruction about what to do and some stuff about what not to do. And the don't put the Lord your God to the test. I don't remember in verse 16, as you tested him at Massa. What was that? I don't remember that.
What? So remember what happened all throughout, because that's just one section. What happened all throughout the journey in the desert?
They they questioned everything. They
Yeah.
made false gods. They complained.
Yep. Yep. So it's just another place that they complained.
Oh, okay. So the Massa was like a particular place and an event, or is just
That's a place. A place.
okay.
Yeah, it's a
But
place.
by testing, is that like different than different than complaining or losing faith? Is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, so when we think about test, it's, what does that mean? You're going to test somebody. Um, we kind of look at it from the sense of, a teacher testing a student for knowledge. Um, but in some ways, think of it, we can go back to the garden event. All of this stuff, anytime you're in the Old Testament, you can go back to the garden. And so in some ways, did Adam and Eve test God?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were trying to see if they would get punished.
Well, I don't know that they were going to see if they could get punished, but what I would say is that, they in some ways came up against God and questioned his, not only his authority, but his intentions and his love, his goodwill.
Mm.
That, God wanted the very best for them. And they, didn't believe that and kind of, tested. And so all of the, when the Old Testament here is using the word test like this, it's all of that complaining and whining and stuff like that that they've done throughout their history.
And
Other
we still do.
yes, and we still do. And we still do. All right. So if there's no big looming questions, I think what we'll do is we're going to look at this kind of in sections a little bit. And so, here's the part that we talked about week number 1, Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Now, what do you remember about our conversation about the Shema before?
That you have to recite it fairly often.
Okay, so
Twice a day, right?
yep, for Jewish persons, this is a prayer that's said twice a day, in the morning and at night. So upon arising and upon going to bed. Anything else you can remember?
It's not to be only one God.
Okay, it's only one God. Okay. And so in some ways, this is the foundation, the central kind of profession of the Jewish faith. Okay. And it kind of emphasizes the centeredness, the focus of God. Now, if in a Jewish way, it says, we have the Shema. In a Christian context, what would be a foundational declaration that we would use? What would be kind of similar?
The commandments of Jesus? Is that
All
what you
right,
mean?
no, not so much the
No.
commandments, but
Great commandment.
say that, Sue.
The great commandment.
Okay, so Jesus said the greatest commandment, are two: love the Lord your
Yeah.
God, love the. But the central declaration, what I mean by that is like a statement, more of a quick statement of faith.
Oh,
It's the long prayer that they have during church, and now I can't remember the name of it.
the creed.
The
The Apostles' Creed.
Apostles' Creed or Our Father.
No, not the Our Father.
I would say it's the for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son,
Okay, yeah.
that whosoever believeth in him hath eternal life.
All right, that's good. In the early church, time of Paul, the central declaration for them would be Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord. Okay. So in the same way, and that's just, when we say Jesus is Lord, um, there's a lot of stuff packed into that little sentence. Okay, it has, a rich and deep meaning for us, just like the Shema would have for our Jewish brothers and sisters. And so what the Shema does is it defines the very core of their faith. Okay. And so we looked at the Shema, earlier, and we looked at it really in the context of remembering. Okay, because within that little section, there's a lot of stuff about remembering, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we talked about it in context of remembering, but what's its relationship to love? What's its relationship to love?
I can see a relationship to modern Orthodox Jews. And maybe that's just because I worked with a lot of people when I was still a nurse and I was doing home care. And I had a lot of Orthodox Jewish patients in Narberth and Drexel Road in Overbrook. They had, and it brings me into the thoughts of the apostles. Why did there have to be 12 apostles and Jesus? And these gentlemen, it had to be men. You needed to have 13 people every morning to say the Shema. You had to have 13 men.
Okay.
Where does that come from?
I don't know, but I mean, I couldn't go in there until 9 o'clock in the morning, and all the yarmulkes would be piled up. They would have to, apparently they would come in, they would pick up their yarmulke or the kabach, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
and there had to be 13 people to say the Shema, and there are 13 with Jesus and the apostles. So they had to have 13 people every morning and every evening to say the Shema.
Well, that's in the very Orthodox section
But
of
it's still,
Judaism.
Jesus was Orthodox.
No, yeah, no, I understand, but in the what conservative and the more liberal sections, when they say the Shema, it's not, doesn't necessarily have to be in morning. I mean, it's become an sort of an individual kind of prayer as well.
I'm just kind of connecting this with, I mean, we have a lot of friends that are Jews,
Mhm.
and we're medical field, and we've been to brisses, and they all say the Shema when the bris is done. But this is like the whole structure and I realize like we're like kind of floating around here with between Christianity and Judaism, but this is the structure.
Mhm.
And why did Jesus choose only 12 people? Why do we make sure that we pray in the morning and the night? It's all intertwined.
Sure. Yep. I mean, the magic of 12 comes from there were 12 tribes. So, 12, you see that number 12 repeated often, and it stems back to stuff we're studying now. Okay. So, make sense of some of the stuff that we're studying.
I
Okay.
never realized it. I never realized it until I started reading this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why we spending time in the Old Testament like we are. All right.
Doesn't
So
the 12 go back to like Babylonian stuff, like even predating this, though? I mean, the 12s and they were all obsessed with the 12s and the 360s and the
yeah, so numerology is not unique to Judaism. It's was seen in a lot of other ancient Near Eastern religions, whether it be Babylonian, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, all those kinds of things as well. Yeah, I mean, what I think one of the things you have to remember is that the ancient Israelites, they were unique, but at the same time, they were not unique. Um, the laws and being separate, being monotheistic, and that kind of stuff made them unique. But a lot of the other stuff, even some of the creation accounts, the flood accounts, and those kinds of things are accounts that are similar to other ancient religions. So in some ways they were the same, and in some ways they were different. So the relationship of the Shema to love. So it says that, in the Shema that we need to love God with all our heart, soul, and strength. And so what does that mean, or what does that look like? What does it mean to love God with all your heart, your soul, and strength?
Oh, it's unattainable in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, you might have the intention, but in practice, I mean, you're human, so you still have like ill feelings about people, and that's not godlike,
Okay.
as an
So
example.
so what you're saying then, Mark, is that this is a goal, a lofty goal that in some ways is unobtainable,
In
but
some
something maybe
ways,
we should strive for.
yeah. I mean, look at like Mother Teresa. I mean, she still feels like she wasn't there.
Okay.
I mean, earlier you asked us the question about if you love someone deeply, how do you show it?
Uh-huh.
So, hey, I'm
There's,
being a
there's
good student.
there's a little connection there, huh?
Um, yeah, so the things that we would do for a person that we care about, we should be doing for God. So whether it's spending time with or caring for or those things that we listed.
Yeah, making a priority. Okay. So in in what ways, so what would it look like? What would it look like? And Mark mentioned Mother Teresa.
I think, setting aside time, like Advent and Lent are times when we have these devotionals and stuff and just like or reflecting on how well we're doing. I mean, I always try these things and I don't know, what do they say? It takes so many days or so many hours or whatever to make a habit. To try to get into a good habit of prayer or of reading scripture or whatever. Um, so, some of these things I do either like now with technology or with devotional booklets, like those kinds of things can help to keep you connected to God, I guess.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we're looking at, okay. So what does it mean to love God? In some ways, we need to think about, okay, what what ways do we stay connected to God?
I just got an app on my phone. I was watching a football game, I think. I'm not sure, where an ad came up for something called Hallow, which is a new
Halo, yeah,
Hallow, not Halo.
yeah, hello.
Hallow, a new app, and it will, just like the Bible app, will send you notifications throughout the day of like scripture readings. So, in between all the stupid pop-up ads that you get for whatever thing, free donut, that kind of stuff. In between that is popping up a scripture verse, and that's, keeping God top of mind. It's kind of
Yeah,
nice.
we've had some conversations in the past kind of about that, as far as, how can we be more mindful throughout the day, that we are, first in God's presence. And, we are, in relationship with God. Uh, and so in some ways, I think that becomes a challenge for us because, we're busy. Um, in some ways, God is invisible. In some ways, God doesn't say a whole lot. And so if someone's invisible and doesn't say a whole lot, sometimes it becomes challenging to remember. And so, there's lots of ways that we can, periodically through the day get gentle reminders. And so, as I mentioned, that the Shema is central to Jewish belief and Jewish faith. And in the same way, that same foundation should be the core for our life. Because if we think about it, um, what did Jesus say?
You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Right. So when that person came up to Jesus and said, Rabbi, what can I do to inherit the kingdom? What can I do to be saved? And what did Jesus say? First, he said, follow the commandments. And what did the young man say?
What's the greatest one?
No, he said, I've done all of
Oh,
those. He said,
Yeah.
I've done all of those. And so then Jesus says, well, then, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so, the same kind of core foundational belief that is our brothers and sisters in the Jewish faith is the same one that we have today. And so, the Shema is central to our faith, just like it is to Jewish persons. And in that it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." What does that mean? What does it mean that the Lord is one?
Kind of questions our thoughts about the Trinity. The Lord can't be three if the Lord is one.
Yeah, well, yeah, when we get into the Trinity, minds tend to hurt.
Well, I got my own opinions. I've told you that, and
Hmm.
I think it makes sense, but that's okay.
Well, I think it makes sense too, but I think the one thing when they make this profession that the Lord is one, um, would do you think there might be just a different way to translate that to make it clearer for us in English?
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
the Lord is unified.
oh, I
God
was
is
gonna,
unified.
I was gonna say insert two more words, and they're like the only one.
Yeah, that work. Yeah. So when we think about the Lord is one, okay, it's not a profession about a Trinity or things like it, because that does not make sense for a Jewish person. Okay, the idea of Trinity, the God being uh, Father, Son, and Spirit, really is something that is more contemporary in the sense that it comes out of ancient Christianity, not ancient Israelites. So for them, the declaration that there is only one God. So what Debbie says, the Lord. What did you say? To insert two words
The only,
is the
the
only
only
one.
one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
or there's only one God. Okay, because think about these folks. Remember, we got to put this chapter in perspective. Remember, it's part of a larger sermon, and and who are the hearers of the sermon?
The Israelites.
The Jewish
Okay,
Israelite.
people.
great, the Israelites, but
Mhm.
which ones?
Oh, the
Those,
second generation.
Yeah, it's the second generation. So this is the group of people that their parents said no to going into the promised land. So they were told they needed to wander for 40 more years. Their parents have died off, and now it's them preparing to go into the promised land. Okay, so when they go into the promised land, so they're going to go in, and there's going to be all kinds of other people, right? And there's going to be all kinds of differences. And what is one of those big differences going to be?
the
Multiple
God.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're going into a situation where, all these other folks, Moabites, Canaanites, Jebusites, Perebusites, all those people are folks that don't know, nor do they worship Israelites' God, Yahweh. For them, they have, multiple gods. Okay. Um, and so they have a very polytheistic type of outlook. And so with that polytheistic outlook, how does one look at gods? How
Well,
do you wrap your mind
I think
around it?
in verse 10, it's making sure that, like, they realize that, you're coming into a place that you didn't build, you didn't fill their pantries, you didn't fill their water, you didn't dig their wells, you didn't plant their vineyards, and make sure that when you when you are having a great time in this place, this is when you eat and are full, then don't forget that God sent you there.
Right. Well, not only did
It's not
God
it's
send you
not
there,
those people that gave it to you, it was God.
yeah, God gave it to you. Um, and so, that the whole idea here is that these folks are getting ready to go into the promised land. Promised land is occupied by folks that are polytheistic. Okay. And in some ways, when you go in and amongst another culture, and you're trying to set up shop, what's one of the dangers?
Assimilate.
Assimilate.
Mhm.
So syncretism, you kind of mold those things together. Okay, well, so if they're coming into the promised land, and say maybe they're coming into Canaan. Okay, and Canaan's there, and Canaan has the sun god, the moon god, the water god, all these gods. And here I come in, and they'd say, what God do you worship? Well, I worship one God, and it's the God, and his name is Yahweh.
Well,
Okay. what would they say?
Yep, okay.
All
Like,
right.
let's integrate him with the rest of our gods.
Exactly, exactly. And so, there's that temptation of kind of assimilation here. And, what does God say? What kind of God is he? He's a
False.
Jealous.
jealous God. He's jealous, okay? And so the big thing as they move into this land is remembering that they serve uh one God. Okay. And so that was very important to them as they kind of travel into the land. What does it have to say for us today?
Well, some of this just aside, uh, verse 13, it's like a whole recreation of the Ten Commandments. You know,
Yep.
you have one God, that's it. He's a jealous God. Don't, if you forget about that and you start worshiping other people, the wrath of God is going to come down, you're going to be destroyed.
Yep.
So I know we've talked about this before, and it's something just that I think about is when I think about where is the line crossed when people are praying to saints or worshiping saints um, in modern day. Where is that falling here? Um, because it seems to kind of like speak to that whole graven images and
Okay. Yeah. So the whole idea of really idols.
Mhm.
And so it becomes a little confusing, if you will, in the sense that, so if you have a graven image, what does that graven image do?
The thing itself becomes of value versus the person that it represents. Like an
Okay.
example I can think of for Christians anyways, like if you think about the cross symbolizes for us something,
Right,
but the cross itself is a symbol. It's not you're not worshiping the cross.
right, right, right. And so when we think about, a graven image is a symbol, sort of a reminder of that it kind of goes beyond itself and points to something greater. Okay. And so if you're asked the question, okay, what about, praying to saints? Um, and so you have to
Mm-mm.
think about, okay, what is what's the theology behind that? So how does that kind of work, if you will? And
Well, that's what
so,
I mean. Like when you have like statues that cry or whatever it is, and
yeah, so in some ways they're symbols of representations, okay, and the representations of saintly people, and in that, in that tradition, the belief is that the saints are in heaven, and the saints are, in the presence of God, and that the saints work on behalf of those that are here to intercede.
Well,
That makes sense?
Yep.
I used to get into a lot of trouble with my Catholic grandmother, my father's mother,
Mhm.
because when I was staying with her, which I did a lot, um, I would go to mass with her. And as I got a little bit older, I asked, well, why are you praying to this saint? Why are you praying to this statue? she tried for, I don't know, God knows, 20 years to convert me, but that's beside the point. And she said, well, no, that's not, you're not praying to the statue. It's reminding me of, it's reminding of you who you're praying to. I said, well, aren't you supposed to not be praying to a person? Aren't you supposed to be praying to Jesus? We're not allowed to pray to Jesus. We have to ask the saints to pray to Jesus. And I tried. I
Well,
really
Well,
did.
no, the
I
idea, the idea,
I gave her I gave her Catholic Bibles. I gave her, nope, we can't read the Bible. We're not allowed to. It's just like,
well, some of the, go ahead, Herman, you were going to say something.
I forgot.
okay.
Well,
You know,
if you remember, interrupt me. Well, you got to remember that some of that stuff is remnants from, you know, uh church history. A lot of that stuff is like pre-Vatican II.
oh
And
God, yeah, she was like
yeah,
120 when she died.
yeah,
But anyway,
and so the Roman Catholic Church, in that time believed that it was not the purview of the laity to interpret the Bible.
listen, I remember going to mass with her in Latin.
Yeah, yeah. And so, when you have, that, it's okay. Yeah, you don't read the Bible. You don't do Bible study. You don't do that stuff because the authority for interpretation relies or lies in the church. So the church will tell you how and what to believe.
I could
Um,
never get it across to her that why, I mean, I was never brought up, I've always Protestant, why we didn't need to go to confession.
well,
And I kept telling her because the priest can't help us. We have to, we have more responsibility. We have to, we have to work out our sins with God. We have to sit down and talk to God. And she just didn't quite,
Right.
she was
well,
flabbergasted
Her
that
perspective,
we would have the audacity to talk to God.
right. So from their perspective, you needed somebody to intercede for you.
hmm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah,
So yeah, so what you're thinking about and what you're dealing with is just what happens what happened within church history, in the sense that as we move along, there was a group of people that have had a revelation that okay, the Bible should be accessible to all people, and it should be
Mhm.
accessible in their own language. They should have the right and responsibility to read the Bible. They should have the right and responsibility to be able to interpret that. And so now you have the offshoot of, you have a Reformation. And so you have those Protestant denominations that come kind of off of that. And then, our Roman Catholic brothers and sisters, as they move along, then they have, Vatican II, which kind of revitalizes and kind of, in some ways, modernizes the church and church belief, so that, yeah, people can read the Bible, people can study the Bible, and those kinds of things. So all of them are different expressions. Neither one is wrong, but they're merely just different expressions of how we interact and how we live as Christian people. And in fact, we can get back to that first question there. What does it mean to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength? So if I am within the Catholic tradition, which is a very sacramental sacramental type of faith. So they have sacraments. So what does it mean for me as a good Roman Catholic person to love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, strength, and mind? Well, first and foremost, it's participating in the sacraments. That's going to Mass and receiving the Eucharist. That's confessing my sins. Um, it's making sure baptism, all the participating in that sacramental structure, because it's through those sacramental structures that brings me into the presence of God. Now, for some, that's great. Well, for others, okay, that doesn't work. Does it mean that that's wrong? No, different expression. And so for some others, they're in a Protestant frame. And within that, we have many, many different expressions of Protestantism. But all of those are really seeking ways and seeking, theologies in which we can understand God, understand ourselves better, and ultimately have a relationship with God. So, what does it mean to love the God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength? Well, and that could look differently for different people. If you're Roman Catholic, it looks different. If you're a Methodist, it looks a different way. If you're Episcopalian, it's going to look a different way. All worship this one God, but just different expressions of that work for different people.
Jess, to God, does that all to God, no matter which way you express or learn to take the time to learn him more, no matter which way you choose to do it, that still makes him happy.
Absolutely.
So as long as you're searching for him and trying these different ways, God is happy with you trying to find your way to have a relationship with him.
Exactly. So I look at it like this: kids, okay? We all have some kids, right? Most of us have kids. All right. So are all kids the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody loves their kids, right?
Well, sometimes.
Okay, sometimes. Okay. So yeah,
I had two that I wanted to bury when they were 13 and dig them up when they were 21.
Well, I would say we all love our kids, but sometimes we like them more than we do at other times. Okay. But so we love our kids. Okay. But is that love expressed and received in the same exact way?
No.
No, it's different.
And
but
I
it works.
honestly, just a little on the side, I never really, really understood how God could love us no matter what we did, no matter where we blanked up, no matter what, until I had kids.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood it. I couldn't wrap my mind around it.
Yep. So, that's why I started off this conversation with, okay, we all love someone or something, and well, someone hopefully. And, how do we, express that love? How do we, um, experience that love? And it's interesting because when we think about love, we're all hardwired differently. Because if I asked each one of you and you were honest, and I said to you, what are some ways that you receive love? And what are some ways that you express love? They would be different. They would be different. Anybody familiar with the book, The Five Love Languages?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a book, it's called The Five Love Languages, that, there's theory that, we give and receive love in 5 different ways. And don't ask me to recite them right off the top of my head because I can't remember. But basically, some people, want, you know, what do they want more than anything else? They just want to be with somebody. They want presence, physical presence. Other people, they find love by receiving gifts. Um, so there's these five ways in which we give and receive love. And like as all of us are different. And so in the same way that we have those love languages in which we express our concern for other people, the same is for God. The whole idea of loving God, it can't be prescribed and be the same for every single person. What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for someone else. But what we really, the goal here is to think about, okay, for you, what does it mean to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength? Um, and that can sometimes be a bit challenging. Sometimes we don't do a good job of loving others or even loving ourselves. I, I said some of us, and we don't do a good job of loving ourselves sometimes as well.
Jesse, we're in the same business. How many times? Be honest.
Yeah, 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 yeah. People don't do a good job.
No.
And quite honestly, sometimes, things get in the way that we don't do a good job. So what does it mean to
Yes.
love God with all your heart, soul, and strength? We also got to remember, linked to that is this declaration that there is only one God. Okay. Now we kind of got down this a little bit, is that, um, there's only one God. And what is God? God is the source of all of our strength, our
It is.
meaning, and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, and where we should have our focus. But for a lot of folks, we have constructed other gods. We sometimes call those idols. Sometimes it's power. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's a job. Sometimes it's other relationships in which we put them primary. But in order to love God with all your heart, soul, and strength, it begins with this declaration and understanding that there should be only one God in our life. And so that was foundational for Jewish persons and should be um, foundational for us as Christians. And so,
There's something, just jumping in there.
yep.
There's a lot that drives me nuts about the school that I work at. Like, I'm sure everybody has issues with their workplace, but the one thing that is foundational that I have always appreciated about there is that meeting for worship is elevated and takes a central place in what we do, and it is central in our week. It is central. It is like Wednesday morning. That time is sacred. And we work really hard to protect the time and have a committee that's devoted to like making sure that that space is protected and it doesn't become a space that it isn't supposed to be, in terms of like, I don't know, when some groups say they want to lead a meeting for worship, if they don't understand what that means, um, we try to protect it. And I think, like I said, there's a lot that I could complain about, but the fact that we keep that, time for God as being like, this is the focus, I really value that. And I think that that's the kind of thing that, like, when in the Shema it's saying, wear this, put this on your doorpost, put this on your, like, in the middle of your face. It's kind of that's like an example of an effort like that, I
Mhm.
guess.
Yep. Yep. So when we think about this idea of love, if we look at um, the Hebrew, it's lev, nefesh, and miod. So heart, lev, soul, nefesh, and strength, miod. Okay, kind of what do they mean? And so heart is not only, in a ancient Hebrew, it's not just the heart, because when we think about heart, we think about, emotional, but for them, heart would also include the head. So it's emotional and intellectual devotion. Okay. So, all of your thoughts, all of your emotions are going to be connected to God. Your soul, your nefesh, okay? That's the life essence. Okay. So you're going to love God with your very being. And then bless you, and miod, strength, with all of your might. So all of the resources that you have. And so if you think about this idea of loving the Lord with your heart, soul, and strength, it's a holistic kind of thing. And it's also one that is expressed through actions. When we think about love, how when we love others, how do we love them? It's by what we kind of do. Okay. Um, and the Shema also is a covenantal relationship. Remember from the very beginning with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, that covenantal relationship was renewed with each generation, that God was going to be their only God, and they were going to enter into a relationship with them. So the other thing, um, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. Thou shalt talk about them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on the hand. They shall be as a frontlet between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay, so we got that section there. Okay. And so in some ways, this leads a little bit deeper into the conversation we've already had around, symbols. Okay. So in that last section, some of the things were, okay, we're going to have symbols. Okay. So first of all, what is a symbol?
Reminder.
Okay, it's a reminder,
A representation.
representation,
It's a marking of who you are.
okay, a marking of who you are.
Something that others recognize, like it's universal. It's not just this is my symbol, and if you're the only one that understands it, that's not that helpful.
Okay, so in some ways it's got to be a visual, it's recognizable. And so if we think about it, we there's all kinds of symbols. And so Deb reminded us of, within our own Christian faith, the probably the single biggest symbol that we have is
Cross.
the cross, the cross. Okay. And so we're familiar with symbols. But why? So first of all, in this this section, with the Shema, it says that it's important to have symbols. Okay. Um, so why symbols? What's the importance of a symbol?
It marks you for who you are,
Okay, marks you for who
what
you
your
are.
values are.
Okay. So they
Um,
sometimes are
I,
attached to values. Okay.
I just, I had one patient a long time ago brought in by his mother, and he had been through many, many, many rehabs and other places. And I have a huge cross. When you walk in my office, there's a huge cross on the wall. And she said, the minute I walked in here and I saw that, I knew I was in the right place.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that cross broke because the nail fell out of the wall. But I have another one because the kid's mother, or the kid, made me another one,
Mm,
and it's still there. He built me another one. He said, "Your cross fell down. I'm sorry. I respected it so much. I made you another one,
mhm.
and now
Well,
that one is there."
yeah, well, it's an interesting thing with symbols. Okay, so we got the cross. So there's some shared meaning there. Okay, but is that shared meaning always universal?
No.
No.
No. So it's shared among specific people because I think if we would the symbol of the cross at the time of Jesus was something very different
Yeah.
than for us today.
Mhm.
So yeah, so a symbol is kind of a visible, kind of tangible thing that has deeper shared meaning. But it also, so what does that cross do besides have that shared meaning? What else does it do?
It reminds us to
Okay, it
be
reminds us.
good.
Okay,
It helps
great.
it helps people to understand who we are.
Okay. Yep. So if I wear a cross, um, yeah, hopefully it's not just a piece of jewelry.
It helps us have an identity.
Okay, helps us have an identity. Also points us to something even deeper, even greater. So kind of as we think about you know, this idea of symbols, okay, it can represent you know, ideas and ideologies. Um, it can have an emotional effect. Some people they see the cross and what does it do for them? Or, if you're not into crosses, what sometimes happens when you see a national flag or something like that. Um, and actually can in some ways communicate across a barrier. Okay, so maybe we don't all speak English, but you see the red stop sign there. What does it do? Doesn't doesn't matter if you speak English or not. When I was in Paraguay, I didn't speak Spanish, but I knew where the stop signs were. Okay. So you kind of, so and that kind of acts as a symbol. It gives us, as you guys mentioned already, it gives us identity. Okay. Inspiration has lots of different layers of interpretation to it and has some memory associated. So there's this power that's in symbols. And so in some ways, as we think about these folks, okay, here they are, they're getting ready to go into the promised land. Okay. And they've made this profession that they worship the one true God. Okay. And they're going to make a promise to love that God with their entire being. Okay. Sounds like a really good promise, right? It's good aspiration.
Mhm.
Yeah. What did Mark say about that aspiration?
It doesn't work out so well.
Well, yeah, sometimes it's something it's a little hard. And
Yes,
so, go ahead, Herman.
it's unattainable.
Yeah, it's unobtainable. So in some ways, if we think about that, that so that to love the Lord your God with all your whole heart, strength, whole heart, mind, and soul is over here, and we're on a journey. Okay. I asked you, I said, if what does that look like? What does that look like? And, we kind of hemmed and hawed. For me, what that looks like is Jesus Christ.
Mm.
Okay. And so if we have Jesus Christ over here, and I'm sort of on this journey, and my job or my goal throughout life is to every day love the Lord my God more with my heart, more with my soul, more with my strength. And so every day I'm looking what? A little bit more like Jesus.
Mm.
Does that sound kind of Wesleyan?
Mm-hmm.
Sound a little bit like what we in Wesleyan circles would call sanctifying grace?
Grace.
It doesn't sound very Jewish, which is what we're looking at.
No,
Yeah, no,
it's
And I
interesting
don't
that
mean
it
that in
doesn't.
a derogatory way. It's like,
no,
Yeah.
no, but in some way, well, we're Christian folks, so we're going to
Mhm.
take the Jewish, we start it from a Jewish perspective, and then we kind of move it into ours. But that was the whole goal. So maybe they didn't, in a Jewish perspective, they didn't, have Jesus, but their goal was to look, more like, more like their God. And how do they look more like their God? By observing the law.
Yeah.
Okay, so the more you observe the law, for us, we think about, sometimes we shake our heads and scratch our heads when we look at Orthodox Jewish persons and how some of the things that they do seem a bit intense to us, like their Sabbath worship. Okay. And the idea of abstaining from work and those kinds of things. So for us, that looks a little strange. But for them, okay, the they're trying to embody that idea of not working. Because what does that do? Embodying the law makes them more like God.
Mm.
Okay. And so, as we think about this, we're moving along. So in our Christian tendencies, for us, our goal is to look more like Jesus. And, what are the things that we can do for ourselves as we, try to move along and look more like Jesus? Okay. So if we kind of look at that, what does it say? Um, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Okay, so we're going to carry them in here with us. Okay, what are you going to do? You're going to teach them to your children. You're going to talk you're going to talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and so this idea of we're going to have, and then it goes on to have symbols. So we're going to have these things in our lives that are going to keep, that ideal of becoming more like Jesus at the forefront. That's why it's important, you know, to to be in community with people that are like you. There's like you, I mean, Christian. It's important, to cultivate, you know, um, Bible study, prayer, those kinds of things. It's important to have those symbols, those recognized symbols that point the way and are reminders about who we are. So all of those things become very important for a group of people that are going into a foreign land where that God is not known. And some of that stuff is pretty important for Christian folks as they're going out into a foreign land where people don't know Jesus Christ or know God. All right, I'm over my time. Sermon is over. Anybody have any other thoughts,
yeah,
comments?
just one thing.
Go ahead.
And I've said this before, sometimes I feel I know some secular Jews and I know quite a few semi-Orthodox or Orthodox Jews. you want to make you want to project yourself. It's like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. You know, who's tied to the literal letter of the law, and we're tied to the spirit of the law, and that's what Jesus gave us.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And I would say that, you know, as we think about those things, we have the same goal. You know, if you think about a Jewish person, you know, what is their goal?
But like the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, you know, the Pharisees or whoever was the Jews that were walking past him couldn't, they were going to let him bleed to death because otherwise
That would be unclean.
they would be unclean. Whereas we would, well, maybe some people wouldn't, but as you and I and Herman and Alan as medical people, first thing we would think of to do would be to run to that person, no
Mhm.
matter what. They could have HIV, they could have Hep C, they could have anything. We could be contaminated by them.
Yeah,
But the spirit of our law says that we will help anyone at any time, anywhere.
yeah, I agree with you. Um, and I think that, you know, if we think about Jesus, you know, what was his one kind of indictment about Judaism? Is that in some ways,
He helped everyone, everywhere, anytime.
right? In some ways, but the problem was that in some ways they began to worship the law
Hmm.
and worship the temple rather than worshiping the God of the law or the God of the temple.
Hmm.
And so just like you know, Jesus can indict them about that. Jesus can indict us about the same thing, that sometimes
Yes.
you know, while we say we follow the spirit of the law,
Oh, we mess up constantly.
yes, we mess up a lot. But I hope you see that there's some parallels between, you know, that Deuteronomic movement into the promised land and us moving out into the world is kind of similar. All right.
And in escape from, I know Orthodox